know if you know about libraries, but libraries, we're not competitive. We like to share resources, and we like to share resources with each other. So we've got our colleagues on in the panel today. How about you introduce yourselves? Michelle, let's start with you.
Hi, my name is Michelle Brown, and I am a electronic resource librarian at the main library in Lafayette Parish.
I'm Shelly Miller. I'm our youth services librarian at Ascension Parish Library.
I'm Jennifer Oglesby. I'm the digital services librarian with the Livingston Parish Library.
And hey, everybody, I'm Rain Araneda, and I am at the new Downtown River Center Branch Library Makerspace, and I'll be helping to moderate this panel, which is Building Communities Library Makerspaces. Welcome to the show. So do we want to go ahead and get started, everybody?
Sure. Sounds good.
Great. Okay, so my first question is, I want to know about your passion for a makerspace. Tell me about what your makerspace does at your library, what you guys are offering. What do you do there? Just give us a brief intro. Let's go with Michelle.
Okay. Well, our makerspace is sort of our flagship, I guess. Each of our libraries have a makerspace, but they're all different. Ours has a laser cutter, 4 3D printers, an embroidery machine, 6 sewing machines. We have a vacuum former, Legos, different STEM building project type things, and cubelets, different robots and stuff like that.
Nice. And how long have you guys been open?
We have been open since the renovation, which happened in it got finished in 2015. And so we've been open since then. We closed, of course, in March due to the pandemic, and we've recently reopened in October to the public.
Oh, awesome. Cool. I'm going to definitely get back with you on that. All right, let's talk to Michelle from Lafayette. Let's hear about your space.
That was just me.
Oh, sorry, my bad. I'm reading the thing. Okay, let's look at Jennifer. Looking at the wrong screen. Go for it.
I'm with the Livingston Parish Library. I work at the Denham Springs Walker branch, and that's where we have our main Idea Lab. We're starting to have mini Idea Labs at the other branches. They're most of them have a 3D printer and a Cricut machine, which will do die cutting, mostly vinyl, but it can do a lot of other stuff, and we're kind of exploring the opportunities there. Our main space where I work has 5 3D printers. We've got a Vive Cosmos, which we're very excited about. We have button makers, magnet makers, stick-it makers, lamination machine, a sewing machine, and bookbinding. And we've just gotten a CNC, which will do cutting and engraving on wood. So lots of cool stuff to play with.
Nice. And how long have you guys been open?
We've been open about 3 years now.
Okay, cool. And let's hear from Ascension.
Ironically, I think we are the only people here that don't have a physical makerspace. We have a lot of the same things that have already been mentioned: sewing machines, Cricuts, robotics. We have all of that stuff, but we don't have a physical space to put it in yet. We have plans for our future builds to include them, but right now we are doing a lot of open space programming. So for the month of September, I put out a creation station, is what I called it, at all 4 of our locations, and we had button makers and vinyl to do t-shirts, and all kinds of other stuff. I'm forgetting right now, but we had a lot of different things out for our creation stations. And we do that sort of programming where we take what you might have in a physical makerspace and we do it either out on the floor or in a program in a room.
So my follow-up for that is, how do you advertise for that, since you don't have a dedicated space where you can potentially put up flyers or calendars on what you might be doing? How do you guys make sure that you have that space in a way that is safe and also dedicated for that time so that people are aware of it?
We do all of our advertising through social media and news publications and things like that. But with September, we had I really focused on putting it out in the open where people could see it, where you would be walking past it. In most of our locations, it was between circulation and reference, so staff could keep an eye on it. One of the things we were really concerned about was the press for the heat transfer vinyls. We did t-shirts. and that gets to a pretty high temperature, and we have kids running all over the library, so that was a concern. But we just made sure it was where staff could keep a close eye and help anybody who needed help, um, and also, make sure everybody was safe.
So library makerspaces are not necessarily a new thing. We've heard from several panelists, and you can see there's a broad range of how long these spaces have been open. At the River Center Library, we are not officially open to the public yet, but we're hoping to be soon. Again, that's because of COVID. We also had to shut down when we were planning to open up, and we're a brand new space. So my other question is, when you guys first opened up, and we're considering safety. We all have a lot of machines that could be potentially dangerous, especially depending on the age group that we're serving in the space. And so what have you guys done as far as badging? Have you guys started badging processes in your libraries, and what does that look like for you? Michelle, if you want to go first, you can. Just go in order again.
Okay. Well, we haven't done any kind of like badging, like you said, or certification. Basically, when people come into the makerspace and they're like, "What even is this? Like, what's a makerspace?" Like, that's not a term. That is just you immediately know what it is. So we kind of give them a little tour and show them what each machine does and like examples of what the final product would look like. And then once they show an interest, we kind of put them on the software, show them, kind of do a tutorial kind of. And then we run the machines. We're not having them. Some of the machines they can run, I guess, like the vinyl cutter. We have a Silhouette. They can run that, but the bigger machines like our laser cutter, the 3D printers, we don't allow the public to operate them.
And so you guys have been open for a while. So is that going to be your consistent plan for library staff to always facilitate that for folks?
Right. Yeah. The patrons are in the room. They can see what's going on. We don't hide it from them, but just for safety reasons, we know how to operate the equipment, and that's kind of how we've always done it.
Okay, and I'm going to ask this follow-up question for everyone as well. Do people have to bring their own materials? So if I want to come do a heat press on a t-shirt, or do I need to bring the t-shirt? Are there things that have been donated, or both? Are both of those things options?
Well, I always like to say we have a programming line in our budget where I do purchase some material for the public to use, and we limit. So like for the vinyl cutter, they're limited to 3 sheets of vinyl, which is like a 12 by 12 square. And for the laser cutter, they're limited to a 6 by 6 little square, unless their project needs more stuff. It just kind of depends. And so we have that money that we purchase stuff with. But I always tell them, we have what we have. If you want a particular color, if I need this, and this, please bring it. And for like t-shirts and stuff, yeah, bring your own glasses if you want it etched. Bring your own t-shirts and consumables, so you get the stuff you want,
Well, yeah, I think makerspaces are great for facilitating people's creativity, and I think it's great that we can use our tax dollars to help fund community projects like this. Let's hear from Shelly in Ascension Public Library. How about you guys? Do you have a badging process? Do you tutor as people come in? Do they need to make appointments? And should we bring our own materials to your library as well?
Well, with our maker projects being built into programming, it really does fall where we always have a staff member in the room. So we haven't gotten to a point yet where we would need a badging process. We always, I said, have somebody there to help facilitate. One of the things that I get in trouble for a lot at our library, though, is I like to let people do things on their own. With a staff member standing by in case they need help. So I've gotten fussed for letting, tweens use the Easy Press, which gets very hot, but, I think they're capable. They know not to burn themselves.
Do you guys have a release form of sorts for folks to use, since they may be using machines on their own sometimes, or are we not there yet?
We are not there yet. The only time I did any kind of a release form was when we did Food Fear Factor, and that was just because I'd heard some people threw up at other systems. But like I said, we tend to let people do things on their own. We are always there and hovering, so whatever good that is. Um, but no, we haven't gotten to release forms. But like I said, because we incorporate all of our maker type of activities into formal programs, we have a lot more control over it than if you have, say, an open space where people are coming in and out, and you might have people younger than your intended audience. We still have programs are broken down by age ranges, so we do have a lot more control over what's going on in the room and who is expected to do what, who is expected to have like what required skill level. And it's the same with materials. We provide all of the materials for all of our projects, but we know exactly what we're doing. It was worked into our programming budget. So that's really not an issue at our system yet either. But I imagine once we do have an open space, it'll be like Michelle was saying, where you have up to this amount of materials each time you come to play.
And then would then folks need to purchase after that? Like, let's say I have a bigger print project. For example, at the main library branch, you have a limit, and then beyond that, you pay like 5 cents per gram. So is there, can you keep going with the project? You just have to maybe potentially add a little bit of your own dollars to keep it going after you reach your limit.
Maybe we'll have a bigger budget. We don't like to ask our patrons to pay for anything ever, ever, ever in our system. So if it came to something like that, I imagine we would just work out a bigger programming budget in the end. Because
I'm definitely for us getting larger budgets, 100%. So
right, yeah.
I mean, these are community spaces. We'll talk more about that DIY culture. We do want our patrons to be able to do it themselves and to be able to go through the learning process themselves and get the hands-on experience. But even without that, having them available to use to prototype your own designs and really be able to explore your creativity is fantastic. So awesome. Jennifer, let's hear from you. What about you guys? Do you have a badging process? Do you have levels for badges? And should we bring materials to your library?
We don't have a badging process. Some of what I'm going to say sound a lot like Michelle, because when we first started our Idea Lab, we went on a field trip to Lafayette to see what they had and then copied all their good ideas. With ours, it kind of depends on what you're doing. If you're making a button, we will teach anyone how to make their first couple buttons, and then we will let you go with that. If it's a 3D printer, which gets really, really hot, you can't touch that. We will teach you all the software. We will help you design your print and put it all together. But when it comes to running the machine, that is going to be staff only. The Cricut varies. It really depends on the person and what their skill level is, how comfortable they are. We're happy to show them and help them get going so that they can operate the Cricut on their own. But if they're not comfortable with that, we'll get them to do the design work and we'll help them and guide them through that, and then we'll run the machine for them. We don't have a badging process and we don't have any plans to make one currently, but we are constantly expanding and growing, so that could change in the future. It's just going to depend on what we see as the needs of our service population.
And so do you have a tier for materials as well, where you get a base amount and then beyond that you need to pay for some of it yourself, or you can bring your own? If I brought my own filament and just go crazy?
It depends on the machine. Again, we've got a lot of filaments and we haven't had anybody bring in their own filament yet. We've had a couple people ask and then not come. So with that, it would really need one of our librarians to check it out and be sure that it is compatible with the machine, because there are a lot of types of filament and some of our machines can handle a huge variety. Some of them are very particular and can only do a few. With our 3D prints, we charge by weight for the finished product, and we're not going to charge you for failed prints. So we're going to make sure everything's set up nicely, and then we will give you a price estimate if you're concerned about that. And patrons do have the right to refuse a print if it turns out to be very different than they expected. With our other things, most of our things are bring your own materials. So whatever price you can get them for, we're happy to help you kind of shop around online and see what will work. But like with our Cricut, as Michelle said, there's such a variety of materials. There's no way we could stock everything everyone wants. So we have patrons select their own material and bring that in, and we'll help them work with it. With the buttons, we have a lot of stuff ready to go, but we'll also let patrons do their own images, and that's what most people want to do. So we kind of help guide them through that.
Cool. I know for our space right now, again, we're not open to the public yet. We are in the process of creating badging. So if anybody wants to come check out our badging process once that's finalized, we can share. And we also are kind of collecting scrap materials. Are you guys also collecting scrap materials from your community for folks to be able to pick up and use, for example, for sewing or making buttons or anything like that?
We're starting to. We're kind of working out some partnerships with some local businesses. Right now, that's going a bit slowly because people are not open and doing things normally. But we are hoping to have at least some scrap materials available for patrons.
I
Yeah.
find I was
Go
going
ahead.
to say I find that once people in the community know you're doing something, they just start bringing things to you without you even asking for it. When we started doing crocheting and knitting programs, we got huge donations of yarn. We didn't ask for that, but our community is really giving, and so they brought that. When we started doing sewing programs, people started bringing us leftover fabric. It just sort of happens naturally, almost without solicitation.
I think in the last panel we just had with the PPE, I think that's when you see a need, I feel like the community really comes together. And that's a really beautiful thing about these spaces. It provides a place for people to bring materials together and have a creative place where they can all, brainstorm together. And, multiple minds are better than one. So also thank you for the segue. Let's talk about business outreach. These spaces, where I come from, I moved here from Florida, and in Florida we have several makerspaces and hackerspaces that have been up for a while. And what attracted me to makerspaces was the ability to access large tools and things that I would never be able to afford myself. So I have two questions, and they kind of go together because of the potential for business outreach and partnerships within the community. My question is, what kind of businesses are you reaching out to, and what would you consider to be the minimum requirements for technology in the space to be able to facilitate really good and long-term partnerships within the community, where the library is able to work with schools or innovation hubs or downtown, for example, downtown development district here in Baton Rouge, any type of businesses, engineering firms, what have you? What would you consider like base minimum requirements for technology for the types of businesses that you are currently trying to reach out to or already have partnerships with? Michelle.
Okay. So we have reached out to our local you said an innovation hub. We have something called the Opportunity Machine here in Lafayette. And so we're just starting this type of process. We've partnered with like Cox Communications in the past to do STEM kits, where it was like a program in a box, and it was like make a bristle bot or do this or do this. And so like bird watching, non-tech related, but science, And so but we COVID kind of shut that off. We haven't really pursued a lot of the stuff we were going to, but a good way to what we were planning on telling the Opportunity Machine was that we can help them with rapid prototyping, which is I have an idea, I have it, maybe you have the plans drawn, maybe you don't. I want to see it. and so I can 3D print it. Maybe I can laser cut it. Maybe we can make it out of chipboard and just cut it with some scissors or some cardboard, And so it doesn't necessarily have to be a $8,000 laser cutter. It could be a piece of cardboard. So I guess for what your second question about what kind of machines I would have, I would basically maybe a 3D printer. Laser cutter would be nice, but you could achieve that in another way. It just really depends on your budget, I think, and how much you're willing, and like the other panelists said, maybe you don't have a dedicated space. Some of our regionals don't have a dedicated makerspace. They just use one of their meeting rooms once a week and have a dedicated, time for making. So, yeah, it just depends, I guess.
I think Michelle hit on a really important point. A lot of making it's not a certain budget that you need or a certain amount of technology that you need. It's the impetus. Like, do you have the drive and the will to have some kind of space? You could use a laser cutter or a Cricut, or you could use cardboard and scissors and sometimes achieve the same thing. I mean, not exactly the same thing, but you have that same project going and just in a different way. Making doesn't require huge startup budgets. And I think that's a big
Right.
part of it. We don't have a room yet, but we've been doing maker type projects for years. And like this year, I might buy 10 sewing machines and put a huge dent in my programming budget. And next year, I might buy a Cricut. And the year after that, I might buy like a bunch of robotics. So you don't need a huge budget to get started at all with any of it.
What kind of business partnerships or community partnerships have you guys been involved with at your library makerspace?
Our community projects are just getting started. We just got a community outreach librarian, so I'm super excited to see where she's going to go with us. All of our partnerships up to this point have been with them giving us stuff, which has been really nice. It'll be nice to see how we can give back eventually. But we did get a $20,000 grant for Little Bits a couple years ago. So our Little Bits collection is super huge. And we're talking about reaching out to schools and making that something that we can circulate among our public school system now that we have enough that we feel we can do what we need to do with the library with Little Bits, but we also have enough to share those. And we're looking at what we've got that we can start reaching out to, like homeschoolers in our school systems, because they don't always have huge budgets in their libraries either. So
Would you be doing kind of like a checkout system? I know at the main branch you can check out Arduino kits. Is that kind of a concept you guys are looking at for homeschooling or for reaching out to the schools?
it is. We did a competition a couple of years ago where we did check out those kits to homeschoolers and to some of our school systems, their robotics clubs, and we had a big thing at the end. So they're already barcoded and they're ready to go. So it's just
Hear
getting
that, community? Hear that?
yeah, it's just getting everybody on board and getting, like I said, we have our community outreach librarian now. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how we are starting to reach out and make some of those connections. And we're looking at science kits and things like that to add to what we have already. So
That's great. Okay. And last panelist, do you have anything you want to add to that regarding your outreach and what you guys have going on for that? What are your minimum requirements for a space?
I think Michelle and Jessica kind of hit on it. The minimum requirement is what your patrons need. So it really depends on who you're working with and what you're trying to do. I really like that we have our own room for our Idea Lab. It's not a big room. I'm perpetually jealous of Lafayette because their space seems huge to me. But we're always finding ways to fit things in. We'll do things in programs, so we'll go to meeting rooms like Jessica does. So electrical outlets. Electrical outlets are my minimum requirement.
Yes.
So many, the more the
That's
better.
real.
Never have too many.
Never.
Yeah. Definitely, that's definitely a thing. Yeah, we have quite a few machines here. I'm excited for our space to open up, but I think having a dedicated room is really essential. And I think for me, my background, I'm very concerned about the safety aspect of it. So I feel like there's a little bit more of a control to have a space. So community support, make sure you push for your maker spaces because they're available to all of you. You should love them because they're amazing. There's just so much opportunity. I can't say enough about maker spaces, and the fact that libraries are starting to do this around the country more and more is just really amazing. And I'm excited that we have this panel so that folks can find out more about it. I have another question. So we have all these different tools. We've got, for example, we have a recording studio that's getting built here. We also have a laser cutter, 3D printers, all of those things. What is the age demographic that you see asking about different tools that you do or do not have that they might want to have in this space? I think a lot of students now are using 3D printers in school. So it's kind of, a default that a lot of STEAM programs, check out our STEAM panel later, have these tools in their makerspace in their schools. So even some schools are starting their own makerspaces. So is there a broad demographic for things like 3D printers or Cricuts? Do you see a specific age group or demographic that's attracted to these? And do you use that in your outreach?
8 to 12. 8 to 12 is more excited than anybody else. We do get the full range. We've got grandparents who are just amazed at all the technology and very interested in wanting to get involved and see it. We've got little kids who are just thrilled to pieces that they can make a sticker. A lot of things, it depends on the piece of equipment, what your main age group is, but just interest in everything in general is definitely our preteens. And that does tie into our outreach. A lot of our outreach is to our schools, and we will bring examples on machines when we can to show them. We also try to just bring information that they can take home. So if their parents weren't aware that these opportunities were available, they can come and bring the kids. But it's also a really great way to get the parents in because they may not have known that these things are available to them, and then they can come and get the services as well.
So you don't see a lot of university students coming in or trade individuals at all yet?
Not very many. We get some,
That's
but
interesting.
not a lot.
I'm really hoping that we're able to build those relationships here, because for me, when I was in college, that was really when I got into the maker community and I realized what type of potential there was. So I'm curious, what can we do more to do outreach to those different groups, university students who maybe can't get into the lab because it's booked and they need a backup to finish a project, or somebody who's in trade school and wants to do some prototyping. Does anyone else have that general demographic where it's mostly schools right now, like K-12 or 8 to 12?
Well, I do youth services, so most of my stuff, like we were saying earlier, is the tweens, and those early teens. I find that that's where the most interest lies. But I can tell you, as soon as I plan something, I have the adults asking our adult services librarian, like, "Why aren't we doing that? Why isn't that for us? Can I go and do that with the kids?" So there's interest across all age groups. I think it's just finding them and letting everybody know what you're doing and what you have available.
You bring up a good point. I think that there's an inherent default to believing that this is always targeted towards like giving K-12 or 8 through 12 experience to the young people, but really makerspaces are for everyone. And I think, that we can hopefully make that known here during this panel. Like, come, it doesn't matter your age group. Like, there is something here for everyone. Whether your community group, soccer team, you want to make some buttons. I'm a big button fan. Can't lie. Big on the buttons right now. And you want to make some buttons for an upcoming event, where it be, your soccer team or some kind of rally that you might be having, or vigil, or if you want to come in and make some t-shirts. Again, if you bring your own materials, if you're a local business, come use the Cricut, make a card, make some stickers, bring your own materials. You might not want to buy the Cricut. You might not want to buy a heat press. Just come and use our stuff. It'll be great. What about, I think, was it Jennifer that did not speak yet on this? Do you guys have a certain demographic?
I started that.
Okay, cool. I'm like, you guys have the same name on my screen, so it's hard to
Oh
tell.
no, I'm sorry.
Okay, so all good. All right, so Shelly is the one that did not answer
No,
yet.
it's Michelle.
It's me, I think, this time.
Okay.
Okay, so particular demographic. I have worked in 2 makerspaces in Lafayette Parish. The first one, where I got my little makerspace wings, was at South Regional, which is by our mall. If you're familiar with Lafayette, it's sort of a more suburban-y type area. And so I would have open access once a week. And mostly what I got was retired people, and a few kids would come after school. Like, I had a particular family that would come every week with their babysitter. And so it just kind of depended. Now at the main library, it's a more urban area, and we have a lot of different people come in, mostly adults. But sometimes it's a mom and a kid or something like that. We have a general rule that you can't be unattended if you're 12 or younger. And so that sort of limits it, because we do have a lot of unattended kids at Maine. And so we don't see a lot of that because they are without an adult and they will go wild. But right now, we're seeing more participation from adults. They're like, hey, I had heard that I could come in and do this. Or I want to make, this one guy this week was like, oh, I want to make a box because I'm going to send it off to be made. And I want to see, like, hold it in my hand and see what it's going to look like before they do it. And so got out that we at first thought, well, maybe 3D printing, and then we're like, well, no, because it can't fold. You wouldn't be able to like really see how the box. He had a box from like a nose spray or something that was open. He had unfolded the box, so he knew kind of what he wanted. He just wanted to like hold it. And so we ended up cutting it out of chipboard with some scissors. So I guess it really it is a variety of ages, and so that's why I've always felt it's important to have technology and non-technology. So if we have a big, if I'm really busy at South and I have all these families in here, well, we can make bracelets. We don't all have to be fighting over the iPads or the computers for 3D printing time, or design time. We can be doing something else. We can do structures with the blocks. Obviously, we're not doing that anymore because of COVID and touching, but it gives you a lot of flexibility.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think making sure that, necessity is the mother of invention, right? So if you have your limitations and your constraints, especially when you're a designer, that sometimes gives you the best design because you're limited. And so you have to become more creative. So, it's wonderful to have these larger items, definitely. But we don't want to, as makers, as DIY folks in the community, we don't want to make people believe that they can't do something just because they don't have this tool. Having the access is wonderful, but I agree with you 100% on that for sure. Some of the best things are the most simple things. Don't want to over-engineer anything too crazy. Right. Is there anything that stops anybody besides, and I'll just say maybe budget, but maybe there's other things that are constraints for not getting access to some of these larger items? Do you guys is there something you want that you can't get yet? And what's the limitation for that in your space?
I did ask for a soldering gun and was told no for safety reasons.
Okay.
But that's something that I think I could push for again. I think sometimes you just have to ask again.
I think especially when you get your own space, you'll be able to put it away a little more so that you won't have the risk of small children accidentally grabbing it.
Yeah, I wanted it to be a tween activity.
Well, you can.
Well, I
Twins are
mean,
not
you might
small
be
children.
able to let your let the people know who would maybe put this as a note to you that soldering is a very common thing right now in high schools, and it's used in quite a few classrooms. So if you potentially have a badging process or a release form, then maybe there'll be a little bit less hesitant to let you have that in the future, because that is robotics, soldering, engineering classes are really big right now. So it's also wonderful that these spaces exist because field trips, so fun to the spaces post COVID. Here's hoping. What about anybody else? Is there something that you really want, can't get yet? What's the limitation there?
We've had a little trouble with ventilation because our room is only so big and there are only so many times you can drill out and do things. We've had a couple of things that haven't worked with what we were initially looking at because they required a lot of ventilation that we just weren't able to provide, but we found other tools that do the same thing we wanted just without the ventilation requirements because they're created and set up differently. So sometimes you just have to poke around and find what will work for the space you've got while kind of mentally planning ahead for if you ever get a magical, wonderful library with no cost constraints and can build whatever you want.
That's actually, I have a question about that too as a follow-up for, because of the fact that if you do have quite a few machines like a laser cutter or 3D printers and things are just running all at the same time, do you guys stagger the use for larger equipment that might set off, that might give off fumes that could be potentially dangerous if they concentrate in the room, or how do you manage that?
We've checked everything we have as we've gotten it with what we already have in mind, so we don't have anything that does problematic fumes, so that hasn't been a concern for us.
Great, cool. Everybody check it out, safe and fun. There you go. Okay, so let's talk about fun. What is the coolest thing that you guys have seen built at your space with your stuffs? What is the neatest build that somebody has come in and tried to, or accomplished, completed, or tried?
We've had a number of neat things made with our laser cutter. We've done stuff like 3D puzzles that look like a big crawfish that's on display in our little display case. Our makerspace display case. One of our Makerspace librarians is making a scale model of an old planetarium that was in Lafayette back in the 70s. And so he's got these huge pieces that he's cutting in little stairs, and it's so awesome. And he says it's to scale, so it's like very mathematical. I don't know if I'd be able to do that, but I think that's really awesome. People have built keyboards out of various stuff. There's also a lot of crazy 3D prints that people have done. It's interesting to see everybody, because if you see something and I look at it and I'm like, well, you could do this and we could put this on there and it could be something else, or it could be, it's neat to see how what people make inspires future makes or additions. It's cool.
Totally. What about Shelly or Jennifer? What have you guys seen at your spaces?
Well, I don't want to say like that there's a big project or a long-term project like that, but one of the things that I found was the most impressive was we did that sewing program in January. That was like a multi-week series, and one of our patrons came in not knowing how to even thread a sewing machine, and by the end she had made her own dress. So that real progression from like I don't want to say incompetence, just a complete lack of knowledge about what she was doing to having an actual finished garment that she could wear. She was so proud of herself, and that in my head stands out as like one of the bigger things. Like, it was a dress. She made a dress, but this person who didn't know anything about sewing made her own clothing, and that seems like such a huge accomplishment in my head.
Oh, absolutely. Sewing is not to be dismissed as definitely difficult. So 100%. Yeah, there's a lot of tech going on there. 100%. That's really great. I agree. I think it's amazing to see that progression of learning and then ownership, right? Ownership
Right.
and of what you can do, and that sense that you get, that feeling that you get after you've accomplished something is fantastic. Definitely. What's another cool thing that we've seen?
We've seen all kinds of neat stuff. Some of it is very simple. One of my favorites is a gentleman came in and he made 2 buttons, one for his wife and one for him for their anniversary. And he had found a picture online of a street lamp from where they had their first date. And I thought that was just really sweet.
That is so sweet.
That is so cute. We're all everyone, see, great ideas inspire. There you go. There's your inspiration for your next anniversary. It's beautiful.
We've done really complicated stuff. We helped somebody make a parade float, so we did tons of vinyl cutout on the Cricut. He designed special 3D prints to go on it. It was involved. He was in there every week with his kids and his grandkids, and just always stuff going on.
Wow, what a range of amazing that we've just heard. That's great. That just goes the gamut. It's amazing. I'm going to share. I want to share
tons of stuff.
So sewing is a real thing, and I just want to showcase this cool thing that we recently did at our makerspace. Again, not open yet, but will be hopefully in the future. This is our solar panel backpack. What?
Cool.
Oh, yeah. Check it out. Sewn by our amazing teen librarian, Allison. And then we put our little solar panel on there. So it opens up and it's got a little pocket where you can put your battery bank in here so you can charge all day. And we've got our cool buttons that we made with our button maker. And we have our cool Cricut cut and heat pressed amazing logo. So
and it's glitter.
It is glitter. That's right. Got to put that bling on there. So yeah, check that out, right? That's my current favorite thing. Oh, and very exciting. We 3D printed the latch. This is just a little prototype we got off of Thingiverse. It's kind of hard to see because of the light, but it's a T-Rex face.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's our little latch that closes us. Boom, like that. Right? Super cool. Cute. This is my favorite build right now because it was a great team effort. But I'm excited to see what folks do in our space once we're open. It's very exciting. Is there anything that you guys are doing looking forward to post-COVID that you want to just like broadcast now, let people know, once COVID does something different, what are we going to be doing?
I'm going to
Do we have plans for that? Is anyone thinking that far ahead, or are we just all kind of stuck in the no one knows what's happening game?
We don't know what's happening, but we're really looking forward to getting our patrons back, being able to let them get on the VR. We have new games, And I really miss all of the D&D people who would come in and they would bind their books and they would make all their minis and do just amazing set pieces. And then I would go find my DM and be like, hey, look at this thing. We need that too. So I'm really looking forward to getting to see the patrons again and be able to work with them in person and just have that discovery of, they see someone else working on something and go, oh, hey, that's amazing. What are you doing? And then we can work together and help them learn that. I miss the teens getting to teach the little kids how to make buttons because they would all get so excited about that.
Buttons are cool. I don't know why I'm so excited, but I got really excited when I started button making.
Oh,
It's
buttons
just
are the
fantastic.
best. Everyone loves buttons.
They are amazing. Yeah. What about everybody else? What kind of plans do you guys have going forward, or are we stuck in the unsure phase still?
There is a lot of uncertainty, but I am really forcing things into working. And I mean, it's horrible to say, but we are doing a lot of passive stuff where we're wiping everything down in between. We're looking at, booking rooms where we have stuff available. We're starting our Lego club up again in January, which is exciting and scary at the same time because considering how we are going to handle sanitation and how we're going to handle like limited patrons in the room and all of that, it's scary, but our patrons are missing it and we're missing them and we are going to find a way and we're going to make it work and we're going to make it work safely. So that's the biggest thing in our system right now. We're just looking at how we can handle things safely, but we are going forward.
Nice.
So,
Michelle?
here at Lafayette Public Library, we have been pivoting, as they say, because of COVID and because we're not doing any in-person programs except for the open access stuff at Maine. We've been doing grab and go craft kits. So adult services has been doing this, but the Makerspace has contributed also. We do a once a month take home sewing project where we cut the fabric. We do a YouTube video, explain how to do it. We include written instructions in case you don't have a computer, and they can sew a small project. We've sewn like masks. Like this was one of our projects for September. It was just a simple little mask with t-shirt ties. And we've done plaques with cut a piece of wood out of the laser cutter, used a vinyl cutter to make a stencil, and then the patrons can take it home and paint it however they want. So this time has been a way for us to like kind of learn new skills because we didn't make videos before COVID.
Yeah.
So in January, we're hoping that we can go back to regular in-person programs where we can do the sewing classes at the library with our sewing machine. But, again, we don't know if that's going to really be a possibility or not. It just kind of is so uncertain. So right now we're sort of planning for both. What can we do in person? We have to do it in person. And what can we maybe do in person? Or if we have to, make it a grab and go or make it passive, like they said, where you just pick it up and leave. So
I think that's a major theme. Hi, this is Jessica. That's a pretty major theme in all of library programming right now. We're just trying to figure out when we're gonna be able to get back to that. I wanted to thank everyone for coming today for this panel. I'm so glad that we got to share ideas and also share with our patrons across the state the different ways that you can use library maker spaces or just the library space to do maker programs. So thank you so much. We're going to go ahead and take a little break. Thank you for coming, Michelle.
thanks.
Thanks for having us.
Michelle.
Thank you.